In the tense decades of the Cold War, when superpowers fought their battles not always directly but through proxy wars and intelligence operations, the skies of the Middle East became a testing ground for the most advanced military technologies. At the center of this rivalry stood a sleek, deadly fighter jet, the Soviet-built MiG-21. To Soviet allies in the Arab world, the MiG-21 represented national pride and a shield against Western-backed adversaries. To Israel and its Western allies, it was an enigma, a machine they could not match in raw numbers and whose performance they could only guess at through second-hand intelligence. By the mid-1960s, the MiG-21 was already the backbone of many Warsaw Pact and Middle Eastern air forces. With its delta wings, supersonic speed, and powerful weaponry, it was considered one of the most formidable aircraft of its generation. Israel's own fighter fleet, though skilled in combat, relied heavily on French aircraft like the Mirage 3. In any confrontation, the unknown capabilities of the MiG-21 posed a severe threat. What if Israel could get its hands on one? This question haunted Israeli defense planners and spurred Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, to attempt one of the boldest operations in its history. The result was Operation Diamond, a mission that combined patience, human intelligence, psychological insight, and raw daring. In August 1966, it culminated in the successful defection of an Iraqi pilot who flew his MiG-21 straight into Israel, a feat that stunned the world and changed the balance of power in the region. This is the story of how Mossad stole the Soviet Union's most prized fighter jet without firing a single shot. The MiG-21 was born in the design bureaus of the Soviet Union during the 1950s, conceived as a lightweight, supersonic fighter. It was simple, agile, and relatively cheap to produce. By 1959, it entered service, quickly spreading across the air forces of Soviet allies. Its performance made it the most produced supersonic jet in history, with over 11,000 built. What made the MiG-21 revolutionary was its combination of speed and versatility. Capable of flying at Mach 2, it could challenge Western aircraft like the American F-4 Phantom and French Mirage III. Its delta wing design gave it impressive maneuverability. Although it came with limitations in fuel capacity and range, still it was deadly in the right hands. In the Middle East, Arab states such as Egypt, Syria, and Iraq received squadrons of MiG-21s, often with Soviet advisors present to train their pilots. By the early 1960s, Israel found itself surrounded by adversaries armed with one of the most advanced fighters in the world. Israeli pilots were highly skilled, but skill could only compensate so much against an aircraft whose performance they had never directly tested. For Israeli strategists, the MiG-21 was not just a threat, it was a mystery. Its radar, missile systems, turning radius, and climb rates were all unknown. Western intelligence services, including the CIA, were equally eager to understand it. Capturing one intact seemed impossible, unless someone could be persuaded to deliver one. The Israeli Air Force, IAF, in the 1960s was respected worldwide for its discipline and tactical innovation, but it lacked the numbers and advanced technology of its enemies. The Arab states, flush with Soviet support, acquired aircraft in bulk. For every Mirage 3 Israel possessed, its neighbors had several MiG-21s. At Mossad headquarters, reports piled up. Reconnaissance flights offered blurry photographs. Intercepted communications hinted at performance figures. But the truth remained elusive. Within the IAF, debates raged. Could the Mirage 3 stand toe-to-toe with the MiG-21? Could Israeli pilots survive in large-scale dogfights against it? Prime Minister Levi Eshkol and his defense establishment realized that guessing was no longer enough. They needed hard data, the kind that could only come from hands-on testing. That meant getting a MiG-21 intact. The plan sounded outrageous. Aircraft did not simply fall from the sky into enemy hands. Yet Mossad had a reputation for making the impossible happen. Slowly, an idea crystallized. Find an Arab pilot willing to defect. Thus was born Operation Diamond. The operation began with an extensive search across the Arab world. Mossad agents working through undercover networks began compiling dossiers on pilots who flew the MiG-21. Egypt had many, as did Syria. Initial efforts were directed there. In Egypt, Mossad approached pilots indirectly, through middlemen and supposed Western contacts. Money, asylum, and promises of a new life were offered. But the Egyptian pilots, despite grumbling about poor pay or difficult conditions, refused. National pride, family ties, and fear of betrayal kept them loyal. In Syria, Mossad tried again. One pilot appeared receptive, but the approach turned out to be a trap. Syrian intelligence was watching, and Mossad barely avoided disaster. The operation risked exposure. By the mid-1960s, the focus shifted to Iraq. Iraq's Air Force had recently received a squadron of MiG-21s, and the political situation inside the country was complex. Discrimination against minorities, political purges, and fear of the regime created dissatisfaction among certain officers. Mossad analysts reasoned that somewhere in Iraq might be a pilot desperate enough to take the gamble. They were right. His name was Munir Redfa. Munir Habib Redfa was an Iraqi Air Force captain of a Syrian Christian background. In a military dominated by Arab Muslims, Redfa felt like an outsider. He was a skilled pilot entrusted with flying the MiG-21, but he faced constant discrimination. Promotions went to others, assignments were limited, and whispers of mistrust followed him. Worse still, Redfa was ordered to participate in missions he found morally troubling, such as bombing Kurdish villages. His conscience and his sense of injustice gnawed at him. Beneath his uniform, he was a man under pressure, dissatisfied and restless. Mossad's intelligence officers identified Redfa as a potential candidate through subtle channels. They learned of his grievances, his Christian faith, and his frustrations. Approaching him would be dangerous. If Iraq discovered the plot, it would mean certain death. The operation to recruit Redfa was entrusted to a Mossad operative posing as a businessman in Europe. Contact was made through intermediaries. The pitch was cautious. Would you consider a new life away from Iraq? Slowly, Redfa was drawn in. The Mossad offered him asylum for his entire family, financial security, and a new beginning in the West. More importantly, they offered respect, something he felt denied in Iraq. Redfa hesitated, knowing the risk, but each meeting drew him closer to a decision. By the time he agreed, Mossad had found its man. Recruiting Redfa was only the beginning. Now came the most dangerous part, planning his defection with a MiG-21. First, Redfa's family had to be smuggled out of Iraq. Through intricate planning, Mossad arranged for them to leave under false pretenses, traveling through various countries until they reached safety in Israel. This step was crucial. Without his family safe, Redfa would never commit fully to the plan. Next came the logistics of the flight. Redfa had to fly from Iraq to Israel without being shot down. That meant choosing the right route, the right time, and ensuring Israeli radar operators and fighter pilots knew to expect him. Mossad arranged secret briefings for Redfa outside Iraq, where he was walked through maps and plans. He learned how to evade Iraqi radar, how to identify Israeli escort jets, and where to land safely. Every detail was rehearsed. Still, the operation was fraught with uncertainty. A mechanical failure, suspicion at his base, or interception by Iraqi fighters could doom the mission. Inside Israel, nerves ran high. Years of effort and millions of dollars hinged on one man's courage. On August 16, 1966, the plan unfolded. That morning, Redfa climbed into his MiG-21 at an Iraqi base, assigned a routine training mission. His heart pounded as he taxied down the runway. Once airborne, instead of following his expected course, he angled west, toward enemy skies. Within minutes, Iraqi controllers realized something was wrong. Redfa's plane was not where it should be. Scramble orders went out, but he was already racing toward the border. His fuel was limited. He had to fly efficiently, avoiding unnecessary maneuvers. Crossing into Jordanian airspace, Redfa braced for the possibility of being shot down. But fortune favored him. Israeli radar picked him up, and soon two Mirage the-3s scrambled to intercept. Instead of engaging, they flew in close formation, signaling him to follow. Relief washed over Redfa. He was almost there. Moments later, the MiG-21 touched down at an Israeli airbase. For the first time, Israel had its prize, a fully intact Soviet MiG-21. Redfa climbed out, shaken but alive. Mossad officers rushed to secure the jet. Operation Diamond was a success. The capture of the MiG-21 sent shockwaves through the region. For Israel, it was an intelligence windfall. Engineers and pilots examined every detail of the jet, learning its strengths and weaknesses. Israeli pilots trained against it, developing tactics that would prove decisive in future wars. United States also benefited. Israel allowed American experts to study the MiG-21, leading to the Have Donut program, in which U.S. pilots tested the jet extensively. This knowledge shaped U.S. air tactics in Vietnam, where American pilots faced the MiG-21 flown by North Vietnamese forces. For the Soviet Union, the loss was embarrassing. Their prized aircraft had fallen into enemy hands not through combat, but through defection. For Arab states, it was a humiliation, raising questions about loyalty within their ranks. Munir Redfa lived the rest of his life quietly, under Israeli protection. He never returned to Iraq. His decision had altered the balance of power in the Middle East and cemented his place in the annals of intelligence history. Operation Diamond remains one of Mossad's most daring and successful operations. Without firing a shot, Israel secured the Soviet Union's most advanced fighter jet, reshaping air combat strategy for decades. The story underscores the power of intelligence, patience, and human psychology. It was not brute force that delivered the MiG-21, but the ability to identify one man's discontent and turn it into an opportunity. For Israel, the MiG-21 provided the knowledge it needed to confront its adversaries in the 1967 Six-Day War and beyond. For the world, it was a reminder that in the shadows of the Cold War, the battle for information was as decisive as the clash of armies. Operation Diamond stands as a testament to what intelligence services can achieve when determination, creativity, and audacity come together.